to G Suite really quickly. We have the spreadsheets are the most programmatic out of all the different Office productivity tools, and it's oldest APIs along with Google Maps. So we're on V4 of the API for Sheets. The main idea behind it is you might have a lot of data sitting in a database, but it's not really visual, right? You're not going to go and tell your boss to select rows out of a database just to find out some information, right? It's much easier if you present your manager with a spreadsheet. And if you're using the API, you might as well tell it to make a chart too, right? So anyway, so down at the bottom, there's a link to a code lab for the Sheets API. My manager at the time wrote this cool code lab, also less than half an hour. It's a Node app that lets you create a customized reporting tool based on toy orders from a fictitious toy manufacturer. So that's pretty cool. And the reason why I tell you about this is because the first code sample I'm going to show you reuses that database. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer all of the data from that SQL database into a spreadsheet. So the first 6 lines of code will read all the rows from the database. It'll add the column names because that doesn't come out of my select call. So I add that as row 0 in all of my data. The second chunk of code creates a brand new spreadsheet. And then the third chunk of code adds, uploads all of that data to the spreadsheet starting at cell A1. It's pretty basic. There's a video on that one. So it's pretty cool to be able to migrate your SQL data to a sheet. Then we have the Slides API. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but you can already guess that it lets you programmatically create and manage slide presentations. Similar kind of reason why you would use this. So, you can think of it from, okay, well, a spreadsheet is more visual than a database. That's great. But even that's not as visual. Like if I'm going to present to my boss, I'm going to use a presentation, right? So you can actually take that data as well as any kind of charts or whatever, and you build a slide deck out of it. So another coworker of mine wrote a different Node app where you can use BigQuery. We talked about BigQuery, the big data tool, and analyzes all GitHub projects and kind of figures out, so how many projects are using the Apache 2 license? How many are using the MIT license? So it's a good way to kind of like get your feet wet with using both the Slides API as well as BigQuery. Another use case is maybe, I have 10 customers. I want to use the same slide deck, but I want to customize each slide deck for every customer, right? Well, I don't want to create 10 different slide decks. I want to create one master template deck. And then I want to be able to read all my customer information out of a spreadsheet or Salesforce or something. And then I can take that data and then customize each of my presentations out of it. Maybe replace the company name and my client name as well as their corporate logo and things like that. And then another coworker of mine wrote this cool Node tool. As you can tell, I'm the Python person, they're the Node people. So it's a good balance. So they wrote this cool tool in Node that lets you write an entire slide presentation in Markdown, and then it auto-generates a Google slide deck out of it. So it's pretty cool. It's got a lot of stars. So anyway, so let's take a look at some code for this app. So I'm going to replace all my client names. This is a variable that I have in my master template. I copy the slide deck, and then for all of my copies for each of my clients, I'm going to replace their client name, and then I'm going to replace their corporate logo with the under logo variable that I have in the master template, and then I just replace it and I give a URL for that image. And then I say, hey, Slides API, please make all these changes globally to each slide deck. And go and do it. So this is, of course, just for one slide deck, but this is going to be called in a for loop to do the other slide presentations. And there's a video on that as well. Here's another one where I'm actually going to import the data from the Google Sheet and the charts into a slide presentation. So it's going to be very similar. And then I made a video for that as well, too. All right, move on. I'm going to talk a little bit about AppScript. This is another serverless tool that we have. It's a customized serverless JavaScript runtime, and its main purpose is to help you automate things, and it helps you extend the features of the Google editors like Google Docs, Sheets, and Slides, as well as Gmail and Forms. But it also connects to other Google services. In fact, it'll connect you to at least 40 different Google services, but it also lets you connect to other services. There's a JDBC service, so you can talk to a database. There's a URL fetch, so you can talk to other services that are online. So this is a little bit higher level. It's not the same as the API code that I've been showing you over the last half hour. So Google AppScript, believe it or not, some people feel it's a secret, but it's not a secret. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of AppScript before, but apparently a lot of people have not, and we launched this in 2009. So it's actually 11 years old, so it's not a secret, nor is it well kept. But what it is it is JavaScript, but it's a lot less like using APIs that we've just been showing you. It's more like you're accessing APIs via objects that are built in. And the best part is you don't have to write any of the security code. So I didn't show you in the code samples with the APIs the security code that you need to have. And that's taken care of for you by AppScript. So AppScript is a higher level form of programming. It is server side, so it runs on Google servers, but it is not like, I mean, it's like Node because it's server side, but that's where the similarities end. Node is basically used for fast, asynchronous, event-driven processing and other stuff. But AppScript is basically JavaScript, like a programming language that runs on Google servers. So here's your hello world. It's a one line. And notice that I'm just talking to a spreadsheet and I'm just adding hello world to cell A1. So the one liner, I just broke it up into 4 lines so it's easier to read, but I'm going to connect to Google Spreadsheets. I'm going to get the active sheet. I'm going to get cell A1 and then I'm going to write hello world into it. And then when you run it and you go through the OAuth prompts and give permission to this code to access your spreadsheets, when you're done with that, then you will have hello in the first cell of your spreadsheet. And that's really exciting because guess what? You did not type that in. Code did that. And then so that's going to make you start thinking about all the crazy different things that you can do with this just by this one example alone. So it's a pretty great hello world example because you can visually see it. It's more exciting than just seeing output on a terminal window. So anyway, so there's a video for that one. But that's, you know, hello world is great, but that's not real data, right? So here's some real data. So I have an address here. It's the Google office in New York. And so I'm going to do something with cell A2 on the next slide. So I'm going to blow up this app from 1 line to 4 and make this a little bit more useful. So with the help of Google Maps and Gmail, I can connect to the spreadsheet again. This time I'm going to get cell A2. But instead of setting the value, I'm going to get the value, which is the address, save that in a variable. Then I could say, hey, Google Maps, can you make me a map and put a pin or a marker on this map? And then line 4 is, hey, Gmail, can you email my friends so they can come join me at the Google New York office for lunch? And then that's what's going to show up in their inbox. So, you know, it's just 4 lines of code that does something much more useful than hello world, but it still only took 4 lines of code. You know, how much easier can it get, right? So that's why AppScript is so powerful, because in not very many lines of code, you can get a lot done. And like I said, this doesn't have to be Google services. I can call out, you know, to a SQL database with JDBC, or I can use your URL fetch to talk to any other service online. And then I can also use the OAuth2 library to authorize to different APIs and things like that. So if you wanted to build this app line by line, there's a code lab for it at the bottom, and then there's also a video. Okay, so where can you take that? Maybe you want to write an app for people where they want to visit all 4 of their customers in New York. Well, because you're connecting to Google Maps, now you have access to, you know, driving directions, walking directions, public transit directions. Maybe you manage a user group or a book club or something like that. Very, very useful to be able to do something with that. So you can start with those 4 lines and build something that's really useful. How is this related to machine learning? Well, so we've using AppScript, you can create what is called an add-on to Google Docs, where this one will analyze the sentiment in a Google Doc. So I just, you know, use Alice in Wonderland. I cut and pasted something out of some passages out of the book, and then I can highlight it, and then I can run this add-on that I wrote in Google Docs to call the natural language API to detect whether or not this text is positive or negative. So if it's positive text, then it's going to be highlighted in green, and then if it's negative text, then it's going to be highlighted in red. So that's also another code lab that you can build. But, you know, just to give you an idea of what it looks like, in this particular case, I'm using an API key. Some of the machine learning APIs let you use that instead of OAuth because it's generic data. I'm just passing in some text. So I pass in, you know, I call the API. Here's the document that I'm passing it. And then here's where I'm going to call the API with URL fetch. So I mentioned you can call an outside service. Even though cloud is cloud, this is still considered a service. I parse the return value, and then you take the score, have the rest of the code, but I take the score and I highlight the text in color depending on whether the minute is positive or negative. So that's it for that. And then you can create more add-ons with AppScript. So all the different editors you can tools with it. So let's move on to some and things